Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on the Craft of the Draft channel. Thanks for tuning in. Today's video is going to be a position audit about the high forwards of this year's draft class. These are the players that connect the midfield with the forward line, the key skill being kicking inside 50 and being able to really set your team up going forward and make those forward half thrusts really dangerous. We've got 6 of them in this draft class that we're going to be talking about in this video, and we've got 5 key skills that we're going to be breaking down about each of them. The players that we're going to be looking at are Reece Unwin from the Rebels, Tom Gross from the Oakley Chargers, Jesse Detoli from the Northern Knights, Josh Dolan from the Sandy Dragons, Xavier Ivicic from the Geelong Falcons, and Luke Kennedy from the Sandy Dragons. We'll kick things off with Tom Gross. We're going to be looking at the following skills: running power, speed, ball use, decision-making, and goal sense. I think out of all the players in this list, Tom Gross is the one who has the most proven experience and the best skill set to go into the midfield. I really like his running power. He's got a bit of X factor about him, and his ball use and decision-making, I think, improved. We saw it improve and mature as the year went on, and he's certainly got the ability to hit the scoreboard.
Yeah, that's a good sum up. And I'd agree with the word matured, that ball use and decision-making, because it was quite poor in the middle of the year, national championships. The general trend with Tom Gross was he's able to find the footy in the middle of the ground, move it inside 50, and he blaze away at times. And it was inefficient at times, and it was a consistent trend that I don't think worked to his favour. Lowered the eyes, all of a sudden he becomes a way more effective player. He becomes almost an assist type of player, moving inside 50, which I really liked about his game. And it was terrific to watch him make that change in his game and that goal sense. He's always good for a goal a game, it feels like. So in terms of that list, I'd probably rank him, probably the top of this list. Yeah,
and I think the next one consensually would be viewed as Jesse Detoli. So he's one that's really improved in terms of draft boards throughout the year. His running power is quite strong, but I think the areas where he really stands out are his ball use going forward, in particular going inside 50, that decision-making to really hit it to forwards leading lanes, and that goal sense as well. He scores goals, but it's probably more his ability to find targets. It's those goal assists and score involvement that really stand out. When the ball is in his hands 70 metres out from goal, you feel like as a team is going to have a shot on goal.
Yeah, 100%. It's the goal sense that I would rate the highest out of all of this, and decision-making in general, the ability to get into small pockets with just leaving his opponent to find out where he is really. He's that good at it. I guess his running is the question in the midfield. He's not one of the fastest out there, so when you do move him into the midfield, it's a bit slower, but he's a decision-making type of mid. I'd compare him to someone like a Murphy Reid, where it feels like time slows down when he's got the ball in hand. Where do you think, just a really quick, yes or no, but is he more of a forward or a mid at the next level? Which one do you see him more as?
I think he starts forward and will move into the midfield eventually, but I think the first third of his career will certainly be as this high forward. And I guess to continue that trend, I'd say a similar thing about Xavier Ivicic, and he's another one who doesn't necessarily rate as high as some others in terms of speed. I still think he's got speed, but it's more so the ability of him for time to slow down. He's so hard to tackle in space, so that really stands out for me. And his decision-making and ball use, I think we saw it in the National Carnival. He got the midfield minutes. Is an interesting one to assess, because I think we've seen a lot more of him playing in the midfield, and he's clearly got that skill set, but he certainly looks the player that will start as that small forward with the ability to use the ball and go forward that he's got, and then move into the midfield. He probably doesn't hit the scoreboard as much as you'd like for someone of this position. Again, though, that comes down to the fact he's been more of a midfielder than a half forward so far in his junior career, it feels like.
Well, even at a Falcons level, he starts very high up the ground at times, even as a half forward. He'll roll all the way up to defensive 50. So I think once the ball is forward, he's just never there to really impact in front of goal. And I think that's why his goal sense might seem a bit lower, because he was hitting it quite a lot in his bottom age year. So I think he's got that potential. From a speed point of view, I think what I like about him compared to others is the intensity at which he produces his running efforts, and you'll see it in pictures as well, just the expressions on his face. He's really intense when he's out there, and he provides a lot of pressure, which I think is different to the type of speed you'll see from other type of midfielders, where it's more about generating touches and getting it out of stoppage. He's intense, gets the footy, and gets it out for his teammates. He's just a real pressure player, which I think that's what I like about him, and the difference compared to others in this category and even midfielders in general.
The next next one we'll touch on is Josh Dolan. I think out of everyone on this list, he's the one that's clearly a specialist high half forward, and wherever he goes, I think this is where he's going to play the majority of his career. So he's one that in a draft where clubs are going to be taking players based on list needs, perhaps more than what we're accustomed to, he'll be one that'll appeal to a club that wants that half forward that will stay as a half forward rather than graduating into the midfield. His running power really lends itself to this position. He's got, I think, a really underrated ability to use his speed as well. He puts it on a platter for forwards and makes the right decisions, and he's always really good for a goal a game. But yeah, that lightning step and the ability to set it up when the play's in transition is something which we saw in the first part of the season before injury interrupted him in the second part.
I think a full season would have put him in the top 30, to be quite honest, on the trajectory that he was on. It's that running power where he confuses his opponent, where he's always a few strides ahead, that he pushes up quite high, and then once he turns around and starts running, his opponent's in no man's land, and he gives himself the opportunity to make good decisions and to assist his teammates inside 50.
A player that he's quite comparable with is Reece Unwin, and I think he's another one in this draft class, probably viewed a little bit below Josh Dolan in terms of where he goes, that he's going to be a specialist high half forward. I think decision-making was an area that was a touch below the rest of the position audit categories that we've got, but probably just wasn't able to necessarily nail down on some times where he has made that really sharp decision. Where I was with running power, clearly he's gone through the midfield. Speed, he's one of the quickest in the talent league, I think, when he gets up and going. His ball use is quite good as well, and his goal sense, although he doesn't hit the scoreboard as much as he would like or hasn't this year, I think he sets goals up quite well, so that sort of saves him in that category.
I think the midfield move at the back end of the year at times was a big impact on his game, because as a high half forward, I don't think he ever really was able to make an impact in that role and establish himself there. A lot of times he'd push forward but could never get his hands on it or make a real impact in transition, and he'd find himself, running behind the pack when the ball went forward and never got his hands on it. So I think that's where he lacked at times, but when he was able to get his hands on the footy later in the season, we can see how smart he was with it and the impact he can have in that role.
And then a little bit of a smoky who's generating a lot of draft interest at the back end is Luke Kennedy from the Sandy Dragons. We've got him in this category. He projects as one who will start his career as a half forward. We spoke to the Sandy Dragons coach about this in a video on our channel, so check that out if you want a bit more of a profile about Luke Kennedy. But he's one whose running power is really strong. We've seen him do it both ways in the midfield for the Dragons this year, mostly in the midfield though, and his ball use decision making is quite good as well. The goal sense we're probably not as sure of. That comes down to a lack of exposure at the high half forward position. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes, because the club is drafting him as a midfielder but knowing that he'll probably start as a high half forward.
He's probably the best defensively out of all these players that we've talked about, in terms of his understanding in stoppage to sit back and not get sucked into a contest, not get sucked into forward running. He understands that perfectly, which is what I love about his game. And he's clean. He only does good things for his teammates on the field. He's very unselfish in that sense. So I think he's one from a team point of view. If you want a team culture type of player, that's the type of player you need. And when you need someone who will be reliable on both ends, you'll have Luke Kennedy for that reason.
Certainly. Very well summed up. That's all we've got in terms of high forwards. Make sure you check out the other position audits that are out on our channel and coming out in the coming days. Thanks for tuning into this video, and tune in for more content across YouTube and Instagram.